Hey everyone, Chris Carter here from the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's crossover Thursday, which means we got to talk with Locked On Commanders host David Harrison. It's going to be a fun episode. We break things down. I'm going to lead you into it. He'll take it from there. But we're going to break down key parts of this matchup, where both teams are strong, where some weaknesses might lie. Find it out all here on crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to today's crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Commanders and Locked On Steelers, both shows part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm David Harrison. He is Chris Carter. We are the hosts of Locked On Commanders, Locked On Steelers, respectively, your daily podcast covering each of these illustrious NFL franchises. If you haven't already, you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are tuning in to today's episode, which we are going to share our three things that each team has to do in order to assure a victory coming up here in Week 10. I can't believe we're already in Week 10 of the NFL season. Crazy. But we're going to start off by talking about what's most important to the Steelers, what's most important with the Washington Commanders going on around there. Both teams active at the NFL trade deadline. How will those trades impact and shape this weekend's game? That's all coming up thanks to our friends over at Prize Picks. Crossover Thursday presented by Prize Picks. Download the app, use the code LOCKEDONNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5. Of course, we thank you for coming through today. If you're new to any program, appreciate you coming through for the first time. Hopefully you like it. You stick around every dayers. You already know because we tell you every day, but a special thank you to you for coming through all the time, every day. Chris Carter, Locked On Steelers. Man, I love doing episodes with you because you are truly one of the best hosts here on the show. I do Locked On NFL every Wednesday afternoon. Yeah, man, and I mean it. With Tony Wiggins, he dropped a clip from the trade deadline that you did for your Locked On Steelers listeners, and it was fire, man. It's always fire. So I appreciate you for doing this with me. And what's going on with the Steelers, man? What's going on in Pittsburgh?
Right now, the Steelers, as a for Commanders fans that are familiar, they made two depth moves that the Steelers did, and it wasn't blockbuster moves. They wasn't guys that are going to break the mold. But Mike Williams, a deep threat receiver, and he talked about that today at the Steelers facility, saying, "Oh yeah, I'm excited to play with Russell Wilson and catch some of those moon balls." He's not going to be the number one wide receiver, might be the number two wide receiver, but he gives the Steelers another outside threat like George Pickens, who Russell Wilson he has a high yards per attempt, overall, and I think the best yards per attempt of any person that's attempted at least 20 play action passes so far this season. And that's what the Steelers want to do. They want to hit you deep, and then they want to run the ball, and then they want to catch you in play action. And so that's what they're trying to hit. Mike Williams fits that piece of the puzzle for what they're trying to do on offense. Similarly, Preston Smith isn't the end-all be-all because they have their edge rushers. In fact, Nick Herbig's back to practicing this week. Good sign that he's going to be able to play again. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith's your starters. Herbig's your solid three. But they wanted four. They had Marcus Golden in training camp. He was going to play for them. He retired mid-training camp. They didn't really make a move after that. Preston Smith now is that fourth edge now, but he's also a more physical, bigger edge than Nick Herbig. And I think that's the thing here. Both these moves were puzzle pieces to the overall picture that the Steelers want to be right now. And that's a team that runs the ball well, hits you for big plays, puts you in guessing games on offense, and then plays tough, stymieing defense, which I think is going to be really interesting to collide with the Commanders, who have been great at running the football to start this year.
Yeah, man, you talk about guessing games, and I'm so glad you said that because that's going to come back here in today's crossover Thursday episode. Remember that because that's going to come back in this episode. And yeah, man, I really dig Mike Williams. I really thought that, that was going to do a lot. Like a lot of people, I expect the Jets to be a lot better than they have been so far this season. I really thought Mike Williams, and once he was able to get his legs fresh and get going from recovering from that major injury, would be able to be a bigger part of that. Obviously, it didn't work out. And when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, man, Commanders listeners, or Locked On Commanders listeners know this. We talked about this quite a few times throughout the season, starting off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week one, that really what scares me about this Washington Commanders defense this season are teams that have multiple weapons. And I'm not even talking like two weapons. I'm talking like 3-4 options. Pat Freiermuth certainly is a guy that can have games that can really impact what goes on with the game flow. So I really like what the Steelers did from an outside NFL perspective. Clearly would rather they held off for a week if it was possible. I know it's not possible, but would have been nice if they held off for a week. But hey, you want to see teams at their best, because if you can beat them at their best, then it means a whole lot more. And then, of course, Preston Smith has history in Washington. So there's a lot of people who have been Washington fans for a long time that, again, maybe not looking forward to see him coming back the way that he's coming back, but certainly a name that people will understand. Let's talk about that offense a little bit more. Let's get into offense. What has been so effective about this offense this season? Because Dan Quinn, like you just mentioned, really went in depth and really praised Russell Wilson's deep ball, and that is something that Jayden Daniels has done very, very well. Third right now in expected points added in his deep ball passing, according to Zebra Sports Next Gen Stats, which is a great stat. But Russell Wilson, in this matchup, he's the OG, right? He's been doing it for a minute. So what's been going on with that Steelers offense specifically that's been so successful, even though they've switched through quarterbacks?
They're finding balance, and that's the thing, David, is that they're hitting you in multiple ways. Arthur Smith knew, the new offensive coordinator for the Steelers that came in this year, for the Steelers offense to be good, it wasn't going to rely on one superstar. It wasn't going to rely on X superstar quarterback play. It was going to be about, hey, Najee Harris is a good running back. Jaylen Warren's a good number 2 running back. This offensive line is decent. George Pickens is a serious threat, but maybe not like Justin Jefferson in that upper tier of guys just yet. Pat Freiermuth is a really good tight end. So, hey, we got all these guys, and we got a speedster like Calvin Austin, a big dude like Darnell Washington. What if we combine all of them in ways that make you honor each of them? And you need a quarterback to conduct that offense. Now, for the first 6 games, Justin Fields did a good job protecting the football, using his legs and being part of that. But what Justin Fields couldn't do was he couldn't see the field consistently and distribute the football to all those different guys and mix those weapons to the best of their potential. Russell Wilson in 2 games has started to do that and do that more efficiently. I think he did it really well from like the later half of the second quarter in his first game on to the rest of the last game. And then against the Giants, he really had it like there was about 3 possessions. They should have had touchdowns where things out of his control just didn't work in their favor. But he's getting that, and that's what's making it dangerous, because now for years, I've said this for years, Najee Harris is the only running back to have a 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons in the last 3 years in the NFL. That shows his durability. But I've said for years, he's much better than just that, because the Steelers' offensive line was struggling and they had no serious passing game to worry about. So people we're saying, well, our priority is to stop Najee Harris. Don't let him get going. But now teams have to honor Najee Harris, honor the passing game. They have to honor other things in this offense. And that has forced teams to kind of leave away. And now you got 3 straight games where Najee Harris has over 100 rushing yards. And that's what makes this Steelers offense better this year.
Yeah. And going up against Washington Bears run defense, look, I mean, just the truth is being what it is. Rush defense has not been their strong suit this season. Although I will tell you, Steelers fans, if you're just looking at that Giants game, you're like, look at all that production the Giants put up against the Washington Commanders defense. I will tell you the second half, much less run game production for the Giants than the first half. So there were adjustments made. Now, some of that was game flow too. The Giants had to pass more, down multiple touchdowns, all that kind of stuff as well. So certainly layers of context, as there always is in the National Football League. But Chris, we got to talk about that defense. And I mean, TJ Watt, like if he's not the best pass rusher in the National Football League, I don't know who is. 3.5 sacks against the NFC East so far, which much more of an interesting stat than an actual applicable stat to this game. Is not like, well, he got sacks against the Giants and Cowboys, so he's going to sack the Commanders. This is not really how this works. But 3.5 sacks in 2 games against the NFC East, nonetheless, kind of just illustrates how good TJ Watt is. The Washington Commanders have been doing a lot of chip blocking. It's something that I went really in depth with last week going up against that Giants pass rush. TJ Watt's going to see a lot of chip blocks in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets chipped on every single play. Is that going to be enough, though, to stop TJ? And even if it is dedicating that many resources to TJ Watt going to impact what the Steelers are able to do on around him?
I'm glad you brought that up, because the Steelers are starting to counter that a little bit. And I broke that down after the Giants game. I went back. In the Giants game, there were 4 times. Typically, TJ Watt lines up over the right tackle, Alex Highsmith over the left. That is just the rule. That is the law. In the Giants game, 4 times they flipped sides. And that may not sound like a lot, but if you go back the rest of this season, the rest of the all of 2023, the all of 2022, and the all of 2021, the last 3 seasons plus the first 8 games combined for the Steelers, 7 games combined for the Steelers, he had 4 times that they flipped before that. So in that one game, and I asked Alex Highsmith, hey, was that part of the plan? And he was like, oh, yes, we've noticed everyone's chipping TJ now with a tight end, an extra lineman, and a running back. So what we're doing is we're going to move him around. And in the game, if you go back and you look at the highlights of that Giants game, the play where he sacked Daniel Jones, ripped the ball out, picked it up himself, they left him in single. Why? They forgot to check into it. And so what they're going to try to do to Jayden Daniels in this game is they're going to be flipping TJ a lot. And now with Preston Smith, if he's active enough for this game and they have all 4 of their guys, They're going to do that with all four of them, and I think there's going to be some sets where they have three men at the same time that are outside linebackers and moving around, and it's going to force the Commanders' offense to communicate where is 90, and if you're doing that, oftentimes you can be there and beat, but sometimes you overcorrect and then you forget. Oh, wait a minute, Cam Hayward's going up A gap. That's what the Steelers want to create. They want to create confusion, and Mike Tomlin said on Tuesday, "Hey, we didn't get to do that a lot in the first half of the season because for about 4 weeks, they were missing Alex Highsmith. For another three weeks, they were missing Nick Herbig. So they didn't even have their top three guys. Now they'll have those top three and Preston Smith. And I foresee a pass rush that's going to be more complex than what we've even seen to start this season from the Steelers.
Yeah, a lot of challenges up front for the Washington Commanders, not just quarterback Jayden Daniels, but center Tyler Zbiotics on communication. Rookie left tackle Brandon Coleman. He's stood up to some challenges. Myles Garrett, Brian Burns. But this unit, I mean, TJ Watt, I put TJ Watt above both those guys. But then this unit as a whole, I think, is the best pass rush unit talent-wise that they're going to see all season long. So we'll see how the Washington Commanders front can stand up. But the Washington Commanders also have some things that they can try to unleash against this Pittsburgh Steelers team. We're going to get more into that coming up next on today's Crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Steelers, Locked On Commanders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Zbiotics. Zbiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Well, pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. I first gave pre-alcohol a try after I had some birthday fun with some friends recently, and when I woke up the next morning, I just felt fine, and that was after a lot of festivities. But here's how you use Zbiotics. First, step 1, drink pre-alcohol before your first drink of the night. Step 2, still drink responsibly. You got to pace yourself and hydrate. But step 3, the next day you wake up and you can enjoy tomorrow refreshed. It's that easy. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedonnfl to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On NFL at checkout. That Zbiotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Head to zbiotics.com/lockedonnfl. Use code LockedOnNFL to get to checkout to get 15% off.
If you ask me, the Pittsburgh Steelers, quite honestly, are the toughest matchup the Washington Commanders are going to face all season long. And that, of course, is putting some things into perspective, but the Baltimore Ravens certainly in that caliber as well. But when you put together the talent, and you put together the way that the season is going for these two teams, Pittsburgh Steelers certainly seem to be rolling. So we're going to flip over now to the Washington Commanders and talk about what they have going on with them. And Chris, offensively, I'm going to give you kind of the quick crib notes on both sides of this thing, but offensively, Brian Robinson Jr., the running back, what we want is a great Alabama back and Najee Harris going up against a great Alabama back and Brian Robinson Jr. Unfortunately, depending on the status of Brian Robinson Jr.'s hamstring, we may or may not get that. There's a lot of layers to that conversation as well that go into whether or not he plays this weekend. But the Washington Commanders offense, quite simply, not the same offense when Brian Robinson Jr. isn't on the field. And then defensively, obviously the storyline of the week is the addition of Marshawn Lattimore coming in. The unfortunate part is he's also got a hamstring injury, and that is something that Adam Peters, the general manager, head coach Dan Quinn, addressed on Wednesday, as we also got to meet Marshawn Lattimore for the first time, and bluntly basically just said, look, we're going to approach the Marshawn Lattimore injury just like we're going to approach any other injury, and that is conservatively. If they don't believe Marshawn Lattimore can be 100% himself, they're not going to put him on the field. That's how they've operated with Jayden Daniels. All of these other players that have been banged up and nicked up. It's led Brian Robinson to miss 2 games already this season. So that is how Dan Quinn is going to operate. He's not going to risk the entirety of the rest of the season for a player or even their career future to get one win, even if it would be a very big win from a morale standpoint. Power rankings, the Washington Commanders would jump up. Obviously, if you're able to beat a Pittsburgh Steelers team, it's not worth it. He would much rather wait and have those guys back for January, hopefully into February, right? So we'll have to see. But quite honestly, Chris, I'm telling you, my gut right now says you're probably not going to see Marshawn Lattimore, and you might not see Brian Robinson Jr. And certainly that's going to impact the way that these things go for the Commanders and Steelers this weekend.
Those are two big blows. I mean, when I saw the Commanders get Marshawn Lattimore, I was like, "Oh, dang, that's crazy, bro!" And and a lot of Steelers fans were like, "Yeah, the Ravens didn't." Oh, wait, they're next up on the list. Crap. And so, it was kind of like, well, at least the Ravens didn't get him, but now you still got to go. Yeah. But maybe you don't. Maybe you don't. The injury that'd be huge. But still, this is a defense that I think still has a lot of interesting parts to it. You got a young guy like Jarzon Newton, a guy, an experienced guy like Deron Payne. They're gonna be bringing it up front. Bobby Wagner's there, Yeah, the Commanders have struggled against the run, but I think that if you can try to hit the Steelers early, try to get them off rhythm, and take away some of the throws that I'm going to keep calling Justin Wilson or Russell Fields, but but Russell Wilson, if you can keep him from hitting some of those early shots where he likes to try to set up easier plays, that's how you can knock them off rhythm. And get things going. And I like guys like Jeremy Chin. I like guys that can be smart in the field. It's going to be about trying to read those keys, see where the play action is being set up, and getting in the right spots to make those contested. On the flip side, one thing that the Steelers have run up against when they've struggled defensively the most, I think, last game they struggled to stop the run a little bit against the Giants, but I think there were a couple structural things that got in the way there. But the biggest thing that I've seen that has been a theme that if they don't correct it could be a larger problem this year is communication over the middle on defense with their zones. And because there's a lot of times where a guy will run with the wrong person, a guy will look at the wrong way, and they'll give up leverage. And then that allows a veteran quarterback or a rookie quarterback who's feeling it at that point in time to hit their guys, get the right read. And if you read the right keys, they'll be open. That's what happened in the Colts game. That's what happened in late in the Cowboys game. If the Steelers run into that, if Jayden Daniels can force that out of this offense, that might negate not having Brian Robinson, because Austin Ekeler is still a bad man. There's a lot of respect. Put that respect on that man's name. But the Steelers are very aware of guys like Terry McLaurin gonna having a chance to eat them up. They know if they played Zach Ertz before. They know what he can do to you. So I think this will come down to, can the Steelers defense get back to communicating at a high level like they have been when they played their best games, and say, hey, Jayden Daniels, you're going to have to throw some elite passes into some tight zones consistently to move the ball down the field, because A, they don't want to let you run the football, and then B, they don't want to give you the big plays where you're getting the chunks out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that the Washington Commanders, even when they're not necessarily having Brian Robinson, that type of element to their offense, losing a little bit of that power. Austin Ekeler, certainly, for those who haven't seen Austin Ekeler play in a little while, he still has a good amount of strength. I think his strength is a little bit underrated part of his game. And the Washington Commanders still certainly, they're the third best team in the NFL in scoring right now. That doesn't happen just because of one person. So even though Brian Robinson is a big part of this team, and certainly, if you ask Jayden Daniels, what does it mean if you don't have him, all those things, he'll acknowledge how great he is, but he also understands, like you just mentioned, there are plenty of playmakers on this team. So while we talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers having 2, 3, 4 guys that can hurt you, the Washington Commanders, somewhat quietly, to be quite honest with you, surprisingly enough, but like Noah Brown, not a lot of people are really talking about him. Ben Sinnott has gotten his moments here and there to make some really good plays. Luke McCaffrey, the rookie wide receiver, is getting opportunities to make specific key plays on like third downs to convert and all that stuff. But you look at last week against the New York Giants defense, no Brian Robinson Jr. The run game certainly wasn't amazing in the first half, but still able to put up points on 3 of their first 4 drives. Most importantly, able to put up 3 touchdowns in their first 4 drives. And like you said, Chris, that really starts to dictate what the opposing offense can do. And when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers not averaging as many points, it's hard to average as many points as a team that's up there in the top 3 of the league. So if they can get in their own way a little bit here and there, maybe help out the Washington Commanders defense, but also the Commanders defense, if they can force some field goals, take advantage of some mistakes and some opportunities, force a 3 and out here and there. If you can dictate that part of the game and put the Pittsburgh Steelers into more predictable situations, obviously that's going to help any defense. And I think when you look at the Commanders, where they've gotten a lot better is their sack rate. And right now their sack rate is top 10 in the NFL. They're going on about 3.3 sacks per game starting in week 3. Weeks 1 and 2, they had 1 per game. Exactly. They only had 2 sacks, 1 in each game. Since then, they're coming in with over 3 per game. That sack rate has gone up exponentially, and something they've done a really good job of against mobile quarterbacks or quarterbacks that can move like Russ is keeping him in the pocket. Keep him in the pocket, allow him to basically run himself into the pressure or allow that second level pressure to get home. Chris, an adjustment that the Commanders defense made last week against the run that I really enjoyed. Initially, against Tyrone Tracy Jr., Devin Singletary, and even Daniel Jones, who broke a big one early. Initially, they were having their front line basically kind of hold the line, hold the point of attack, read the run, try to make a move on whatever direction was going. And they were living on the second level defenders to try to create the chaos in the backfield, right? Second half, they come out much more first level defenders are basically hitting pass rush moves, even on run play. So you're just constantly pass rushing. There was a defensive line coach, I can't remember his name anymore. You say run defense is what happens while you're rushing the quarterback. That's essentially the mode that they went into, is their defensive line was not trying to hold the line. No, they're trying to get in the backfield. And then the second level defenders would take advantage of the chaos that penetration was causing. Specifically, you mentioned Johnny Newton, the rookie out of Illinois. And I think that if they can execute that type of a game plan against Pittsburgh Steelers, even against their run game, get some early penetration from Johnny Newton, Deron Payne, Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, and then let their second level defenders like Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, and Jeremy Chin, when he comes down to the box, clean up. I think that's the recipe to try to stifle what the Pittsburgh Steelers can do within the box.
Yeah, I think it's going to be about trying to find those spaces where you can get guys, you can stymie the Steelers push. The Steelers want to be physical. They want to push it back. They want to change the line of scrimmage, and they want to make it so that their guys are making the decisions at the line of scrimmage, not your guys, and not your running back with space. And so they're going to try to be on that. Now, here's another thing about this is that I think that if Preston Smith is healthy and Nick Herbig's back to full strength, they're going to have, I think, a better rhythm with how they're able to put guys in there. Because there were guys, like a lot of times you could see like Jeremiah Moon, a practice squad guy, was out there, and, the chemistry with him wasn't as on point. But another point to pick at here is, and I think the Steelers, they have good linebackers, but sometimes those linebackers are a little bit more passive because they're a little bit worried about other things sometimes. Like there was a 27-yard run that they had last 2 weeks ago with the Giants. I think it was Tracy, and you saw Watt and Hayward crashed one side of the line. They forced them back inside, and it was kind of a 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 situation with Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen in the hole, and both of them lost out to the offensive linemen in just trying to hold down their gaps, and it led to Tracy hitting that second level. That's where the Commanders got to find where can they create spots where Wilson and Queen and Roberts, the other Steelers primary linebacker, where those guys are a little bit slower to attack the line of scrimmage, try to hit with some play action, slow down that pace, because when you slow those guys down, then that gives you're going to get more space to create those plays and give your running backs opportunities to make those decisions and then get the run game going the way you want to.
Absolutely. So some good stuff from the Pittsburgh Steelers, good stuff from the Washington Commanders side of this thing, but there are three things specifically that each team has to do in order to get the dub this weekend. We're going to tell you what those three things are coming up next on today's Crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Steelers and Locked On.
This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. With the Steelers back in action on the road against the Washington Commanders, right now FanDuel has the Commanders as 3-point home favorites. That's been holding since their original 2.5-point mark earlier in the week. The Steelers' money line is at plus 138. The Commanders at minus 164, and that's been moving ever so much throughout the week. The over/under has reduced from 46 to 45.5 points, undoubtedly acknowledging the potential of Marshawn Lattimore playing, but as David's going to talk about in the show, he might not play. So keep an eye on that as far as your bets to be placed on FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. And right now, you can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet today. That's right. New customers can get $150 in free bets today if they hit on their first bet of just $5 or more. Only on FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook. We're also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections and watch your winnings roll in. Prize Picks is the fun new daily fantasy game that everyone needs to start playing right now. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with any injury insurance policy. Your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. And now on Prize Picks, you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as making 4 correct picks. Prize Picks includes NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college sports, and so much more. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play just $5. That's code LockedOnNFL to receive a $50 bonus for playing just $5. Prize Picks. Run your game.
This week's Crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Steelers, Locked On Commanders, brought to you by Prize Picks. And Chris, let's jump right into it, man. What are the 3 things the Pittsburgh Steelers must do in order to get this road victory. Field goal underdogs, by the way, this road victory on Sunday.
Man, it went up from 2.5 points to a whole field goal. It's been slowly moving in the way of the Commanders throughout the week. But first thing, and I say this almost every week, you got to make them one-dimensional. The Steelers' entire defensive philosophy is about, we are going to take away the run so that we can put you in predictable passing situations, so that TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and Cam Hayward and now Nick Herbig and Preston Smith, all these guys, they're coming for you, and you're going to have maybe 2 to 3 seconds to get that ball off. And we're going to trust that our coverage behind it can create some schemes that'll confuse you. Or if you try to rush the throw, we'll be in position to make the interception and create turnover plays. That's the first key there. Stuff the runs so you can put yourself in that situation. Second key, protect Russell Wilson back there. Like you were talking about getting after him and trying to get that. Broderick Jones has been struggling. The first round pick from last year, he's been struggling in pass protection with his hands. If I'm the Steelers, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that he is not killing Russell Wilson and killing drives by giving up pressures in this game. The Steelers expect to get center Zach Frazier back for this game. He's their starter. He's their second round pick this year. He's been phenomenal when he's been healthy. And I think that's somewhere they can trust. But if I'm looking for anything, if I'm the Commanders, I'm trying to circle Broderick Jones. If I'm the Steelers, I'm saying we are protecting Russell Wilson. And then the third thing here is get Najee Harris going, because when you get Najee Harris going, it creates so many problems for the Steelers. And I think that's a byproduct of Russell Wilson having time to throw the ball, because then he'll hit some passes. But if you get going and against this Commanders defense that has struggled against the run, you grind clock, you force more pressure on Jayden Daniels, that offense, to figure things out. And then you also build that rhythm for the more play action passes where you'll be able to strike more. And then if you're also running the ball, when you get inside the red zone, you won't have to rely on Van Jefferson sitting in the right spot. You won't have to rely on George Pickens tapping his right foot twice versus getting his right and his left foot down at the same time. You'll just be able to run the ball well and get into the end zone the old-fashioned way. So those are the main things. You got to stuff the run, make it about Jayden Daniels being one-dimensional in predictable situations. Two, protect Russell Wilson, especially on the Broderick Jones side of things. And then 3, get Najee Harris going. They do those 3 things. I like their chances in this game. What are 3 keys for the Commanders?
Yeah, man. I think, first of all, they got to find their run game. Even if you don't have Brian Robinson Jr., which I will admit to everybody here, Commanders fans, we're going to talk about a little bit more on our final episode of the week. I'm being a little bit more cautious. We'll use a nice word for myself, and I'm going to say cautious about Brian Robinson Jr. because they have Philadelphia on Thursday night following the Pittsburgh Steelers game. So if I'm being a little cautious there with B-Rob, that's going to be why. But you also don't have Chris Rodriguez. Chris Rodriguez is basically the other power back that the Washington Commanders have on the roster. He's a practice squad player. He's already been called up 3 times, which means if they need to use him again, they got to sign him to the active roster, which means we're releasing a player that I don't know that they're going to want to go ahead and release. So if you don't have Chris Rodriguez, you don't have Brian Robinson Jr., you still got to find a way to at least make the running game, keep the Steelers defense honest too, open up some of those middle of the field lanes, and try to create some of that confusion like Chris was talking about before. Number 2, I told you this was going to come back. Sleight of hand offense that Arthur Smith is running with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I watched every single explosive play that this Steelers offense has gained this season, and almost all of them involve the Steelers tricking a defender into getting out of his lane. I'm watching cover 3 corners who are supposed to be in a perimeter third in their zone in the middle of the stinking field, following a motion that they should not be following, and the Pittsburgh Steelers taking an easy completion or lane and saying, thank you for that wide open third of the field, my friend. We will take all of them yards right there. Discipline. Mike Tomlin just has a history. I know Arthur Smith is the offlayer, but Mike Tomlin teams know how to make you look foolish. Do not get out of position on defense. Please, dude. It reminds me, I don't remember the name, that Magic movie where all they're robbing everybody with all their magic. That's what it reminds me of, is the Steelers are just going to steal all your yards with their sleight of hand. Don't do it. Fans can watch the ball. Defenders, watch your assignments. And then finally, adopt the Marshawn Lattimore mentality. Look, I don't know if Marshawn's going to be on the field this weekend. We'd love to see him on the field if they can get him out there this weekend. But it's not just the hamstring; it's communication. How fast can he get?
Were you talking about Now You See Me?
Yes, that's the movie.
Okay,
I'm talking about. Now You See
what
Me.
movies? Sorry.
One of the things that Dan Quinn talked about Marshawn Lattimore was his willingness and ability to compete close up. I'm talking about stepping up. And Dan Quinn goes back to Atlanta, right? Julio Jones getting right up in his grill and competing close quarter combat with one of the best receivers in the NFL at the time. That is Marshawn Lattimore. That's the dog in him that makes him as good as he is. Adopt that mentality as a secondary. Don't just let these Steelers wide receivers run around and try to get their routes on you, try to get their stems and their breaks, and just hope that you can be better on the read. Go out there, have that dog mentality. Even if 23 is not on the field, adopt the Marshawn Lattimore mentality. Those are the three things, Chris, I think the Commanders have to do to secure that 3-point or better win this weekend against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And of course,
that's our show here on Crossover Thursday. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thanks to David Harrison for playing host of this, as the Commanders will be hosting the Steelers. We've got another episode tomorrow. We're breaking these things down one more time for you on the Steelers and giving you all your picks heading into the weekend. Stay tuned for it here, all on the Locked On Steelers. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. See you here Friday on the Locked On Steelers podcast.